Does anyone remember a few years ago when a sculpture went viral? Can't Help Myself was a kinetic sculpture piece created by Sung Yuan and Pen Yu for the Guggenheim Museum in 2016. The piece consists of an industrial robot arm encased in a clear box. The arm was retrofitted with a squeegee paddle and surrounded by a viscous red fluid seeping from its base. A set of visual sensors followed the liquid. Once it oozed to a certain point away from the robot, the arm would swipe the pool back towards itself. The arm was also programmed with a series of playful dance movements, nicknamed things like wave, bow and shake, and scratch and itch. In moments where the robot wasn't wiping up the liquid, these anthropomorphizing gestures allowed the bot to perform for the museum onlookers behind its glass case. Can't Help Myself remained on display in the Guggenheim for 3 years, but found viral success in 2021 and 2022. One of the earliest and most influential posts on the piece came from a musician on Instagram called Cricket. No piece of art ever emotionally affected me the way this robot arm piece has. It's programmed to try to contain the hydraulic fluid that's constantly leaking out and required to keep itself running. If too much escapes, it will die, so it's desperately trying to pull it back to continue to fight for another day. Cricket's post is a little misleading. The visual sensor is detecting the contrast between the white floor and the dark fluid. The servo arm doesn't believe it will die without the liquid, it's just programmed to perform a wiping motion when a certain threshold of the floor is obscured. Still, Cricket expressed a profound empathy with the piece, and his response clearly resonated. The post garnered over 1 million views, and over the next several months, Can't Help Myself skyrocketed into a viral phenomenon. Much of the online commentary about the piece focused on themes of hopelessness, decay, and entropy. One TikTok video with millions of views contrasts the robot's smooth and playful movements in 2016 with its slow, lurching motion in 2019. I personally resonate with this reading quite a bit. A playful robot who can wave and dance fits perfectly on the cute side of the uncanny valley, and seeing the arm slow to a crawl, having to spend more time painstakingly wiping dark ichor from the floor, it resonates, it hits. However, the artist's intentions with the piece were more political than most knew. Exhibition curator Xiaoyu Wang, writing for the Guggenheim website, said, quote, "Sun Yuan and Pen Yu are known for using dark humor to address contentious topics, and the robot's endless repetitive dance presents an absurd, Sisyphean view of contemporary issues surrounding immigration and sovereignty. However, the bloodstain-like marks that accumulate around it evoke the violence that results from surveilling and guarding border zones." It wasn't about empathy. It wasn't about a cute robot trying its best to do a job. It wasn't about hopelessness. It wasn't about the endless march of time. It wasn't about life at all. Quite the opposite. It was about violence. It was about politics. It was a dark joke about autonomous militarization and the violence required to uphold authoritarianism. It was blood. It was always blood. It was always about the blood. Golden Light is a first-person indie horror game initially released in 2020. Published by Hype Train and created by a developer named Mr. Pink, Golden Light is one of the most abrasive, repulsive, and fascinating games I've ever played. Mixing elements of survival roguelikes, multiplayer prop hunt, and horror cinema like Night of the Living Dead and Videodrome. The game uses both fear and humor to depict a squalid, fleshy breed of pain. You play as a nameless, first-person protagonist chasing after a woman that the game only ever names She. Upon starting the game, She is dragged into a meaty abyss called the Gut, a maze of flesh filled with monsters who can disguise themselves as various objects. It's your job to sneak and fight through the game's levels, collecting the dismembered body parts of your beloved She to put her back together, all while the Gut itself talks to you, mocking you, and begging you to harm yourself, begging you to eat. Eat your items, eat your map, eat your weapons, eat and eat and eat. Even at a passing glance, the most obvious element of Golden Light is its art direction. This game is one of the grossest I've ever played, intentionally so. For starters, the subjects the game portrays are flatly disgusting. On any given run, you'll find and eat living weapons that throb and pulse in your hand. You'll force your head through walls made of flesh, and that's not even mentioning the monsters like the oozing mimics or the frenetic, twitching eye takers. The game's art style has that Cruelty Squad quality, where every frame seems crafted to overwhelm and repulse the player. The 3D models have some kind of high contrast dithering effect placed upon them that gives everything a little too much detail, and the UI is especially harsh. Your mouse cursor is often replaced with She's severed head, and hovering over buttons emits a wet, dissonant chime. Sounds, visuals, and subjects all work in tandem to create a profoundly atonal play experience. One so ludicrous, it almost becomes a prank. Prop hunt games naturally lend themselves to comedy, and this becomes especially obvious in the game's multiplayer mode. Turning around to see your friend getting chased by a potted plant or a footrest is so absurd that it's pretty much always funny. But today we're talking about the single-player mode, and without a friend or company, the game's humor takes on a more cynical, juvenile edge. Playing the game alone becomes an exercise in how extreme, how gross the devs can get before you just give up and stop playing. The game is certainly irreverent, but it's a crass, anti-joke sort of humor. Now, we could interpret this as a failure of the game's writing, but what if we roll with it? What if we accept the writing as meaningful in its own way? What does a childish, evasive sense of humor caught in a world of gore and violence actually say about the story? Why exactly does this game need to be so fucking gross? While much of the game is esoteric and strange, the literal plot events of Golden Light are fairly straightforward. Each time you load into a level, you glimpse a flashback where you see the life of the protagonist and his relationship with She. You live in a cluttered, unkempt room with the blinds drawn, empty bottles strewn across every surface, the only well-loved item being an old typewriter. She often appears in these flashbacks, her tone morphing from lively and flirtatious, to cautious and stifled, to fed up and dismissive. You'll begin to notice a stranger appearing in certain scenes, always glimpsed at a distance through cracked doors and shuttered windows, always talking to She. One of the final flashbacks depicts an enormous surgeon pointing a drill down at the player, hands trembling violently, saying things like, "It will be better this way. You'll finally be free." So, on the surface, the narrative here is pretty digestible. You have this damsel in distress framing where you have to rescue She from the gut, but as you play the game, you learn that the person you're controlling wasn't a very good man. He was a shut-in, an obsessive, a drinker, and an addict. The notes you collect throughout the game and the flashbacks paint the picture of a man who, frankly, seems incapable of a mature romantic connection. A half-baked writer who wasn't meaningfully present in his own life, much less in a relationship with She, watching from the outside as he loses her to a stranger without being able to stop it. Whether you see the surgeon at the end as a literal memory-altering surgical procedure like a lobotomy, or a more abstract metaphor for giving up his own mind through drugs or isolation, it's clear that whatever kind of hell the gut truly is, the protagonist earned his way there, through his own failings and abuses. There are a few other characters in the game as well. Rose is a curious woman who seems to be stuck in the gut alongside the protagonist. In Golden Light itself, Rose is mostly a tutorial figure, but she makes several appearances in supplemental games by Mr. Pink, like Golden Light of Rose and Rose of Meat. There's also Val, an enormous, lanky figure in a suit with a fleshy mass for a head. You first meet him while wandering in the Eternal Field, a hub world connecting the game's levels. He's hunched over, playing piano. You can climb over his back to the top of the instrument to find a strange parasite who insists that Val loves playing, and nobody forces him to play. If you kill it, Val sits up and thanks you for releasing him from its control. Val is also present in the game's Endless mode, and Val and Rose each feature prominently in one of the game's 5 endings. So, spoilers ahead. 3 of these endings require you to beat the final level, and the ending you get depends on how much the gut loves you. Playing the game normally grants you the neutral ending, where you find She and the stranger in bed. The moment is horrific. The walls are bathed in red, the 2 figures warped and stretched beyond recognition. They spasm and lurch, both of their heads locked towards the player almost tauntingly. The 2 are listed as one entity simply named They, and interacting with them only prompts the line, "To be together forever, yet always apart." Something that She said to you at the very start of the game. The only thing you can do in this room is walk to the typewriter and write the ending. Doing so spawns a paper with a pained, tormented note for you to read while the credits roll.
I cannot understand. Was I too late? Was I not trying hard enough to get her back? One thing is clear. I've paid enough for what I've done, but all this suffering only led to more suffering. At the end of a journey, a man shall change, they say. I feel like I'm the same. No knowledge of what to do, no knowledge of what to want. No bloody wrath, no humble forgiveness. I'm neither here nor there.
This ending is deeply evocative, and I think this is one of the best uses of artistic nudity I've seen in gaming. But that's a topic for another video. But if you've been paying attention to the flashbacks or the dialogue, discovering that she is cheating isn't exactly a twist. Shocking in its depiction, perhaps, but not a revelation. The foreshadowing has been pretty clear. The other two endings require a good bit more work. Anytime you attack a monster or break a wall, you lose favor with the gut. The more you kill, the more the gut hates you. To get the ending where the gut loves you the most, you have to complete the game as a pacifist, dodging and sneaking through each level without ever using a weapon. Doing so grants you the White Room ending, where you're shrunk down to the size of an infant, and end the game in She's arms, cooing at you and telling you that she loves you. Conversely, you can enrage the gut by killing every boss in the game. This is called the genocide route, and ends the game on a silent murder scene, where your room from the flashbacks is littered with She's severed body parts, her torso on the bed, her head next to the typewriter.
I finally figured out how everything works. You either keep fighting, hoping to keep the beast inside, or you give up. In any case, you will suffer. You indulge in pleasure and then writhe in shame and regret, or you gnaw off your hands just not to reach for the forbidden fruit. The only difference is that giving up fighting is easier.
This sort of thing is pretty common in games. A good ending, a bad ending, and a neutral ending. What I find interesting is that all three endings require you to take the gut's wishes into account. The gut is playing both setting and antagonist here. By following the gut's wishes, you become infantile, dependent, and coddled. By playing neutrally, you're left betrayed and adrift. And by raging against the gut, trying to destroy it, you reveal yourself to be the true monster at the heart of the story. All of these endings, however, operate within the framework that the gut presents at the start of the game. To find the most significant endings, you must take that framework and break it. Rose's ending might be the simplest one to reach out of all of them. Pick any level and just start breaking through the wall. Just keep digging. Eventually you'll find a door that, like the White Room ending, shrinks you down to a small scale, but this time you're in the field from the beginning of the game, where you find She and Rose having a picnic. Rose says not to lick her. She says your snout is dirty. You're a dog now. Woof woof. You've rejected the gut entirely, and as a result you've become something else. Something simple, pure, and harmless. In particular, I find it deeply fascinating that Rose is here, as this is the only time she interact. And though she doesn't make a direct appearance in the game Golden Light of Rose, Rose herself talks about a mysterious woman that makes her feel alive, one she wishes she were close to or embodied herself. What exactly is the connection between these two characters? Well, I think that Rose is intended as a narrative parallel for She, and likewise, Val exists as a reflection for our protagonist. Val is a writer who took up music, similar to the protagonist, and there are several lines from the gut where it could be talking about either one of them. Also, the law of economy of characters. Golden Light is a short game, the characters who get the most screen time are probably the most important. Val is in the poster after all. Suffice to say, I feel that Val is deliberately being positioned as a mirror for our protagonist, so maybe his ending will tell us something about us, too. Val's ending is easily the hardest to get. It requires braving the highly challenging Endless mode to collect 1,000 gold and giving it to Val between levels. The most gold you'll ever hold on to in a normal run is maybe 100 if you're lucky, so 1,000 is pretty ludicrous. To complete this ending, you have to be an expert in the game and its mechanics, slashing, dodging, shooting, chewing your way through endless hordes of enemies. But if you succeed and give Val the last of your gold, you'll finally unlock his ending. Once again, you find yourself in the room from your flashbacks, but this time, aglow in yellow amber, chunks of gold growing cancerously along the walls. Val is in the chair at the desk, slumped over the back, a shotgun in his lap. with one more message left on the typewriter.
Too much money and too much spare time. I was here and there. Everything quickly lost novelty. Ultimately, everything turns into a prison. Guess the piano wasn't that bad, but I don't feel any passion anymore. I even don't like writing anymore. I tried to search inside myself but found only monsters. So this is the only way to move on.
Undeniable. A suicide. A yellow room. His head engulfed in gold. The last thing Val saw was a muzzle flash. A golden light. This game is a tragedy. It's about a man who loses everything. His work, his art, his partner, and eventually himself. It's about the corruption of creativity, the moment where one's passions become perversions. It was about blood. It was always about the blood. But I still have questions about Golden Light. There was something pervasive through the whole game, something I struggled to pin down but impossible to ignore once I figured it out. In every aspect of the game, from the story to the themes to the art and the aesthetics, there's this sensibility, one that explains some of the game's most baffling choices and completely recontextualizes the story we're being told. Golden Light is just so meh. Golden Light became a curiosity for me when I realized it was nearly impossible to find any footage online of women playing the game. Aside from a few Twitch VODs, every single piece of gameplay I found online was from a man. Isn't that kind of impossible? Half the population, in the modern age where anyone can upload anything, but the conversation is basically all dudes? But let me be clear, I'm not here to get on a soapbox. This isn't a men are toxic thing. It's okay for men and women to create and consume different pieces of media. But here, I'm just fascinated with the why. Why did this game attract such a majority male audience? How is the game resonating with men? How is it speaking to them? What is it trying to say? Let's begin with the most obvious story elements. As mentioned, this is a damsel story. The princess is captured, and you need to go save her. Man uses violence to save girl is probably the most archetypal male narrative in human history. In this particular story, our damsel is she, and she is playing the role of an object of desire. She is depicted as a conventionally attractive character. Her main outfits are short dresses and skirts, with one flashback even showing her only wearing underwear bottoms. Whether or not you find this particular depiction sexy, it's pretty clear that she is being sexualized for a narrative purpose beyond some cheap titillation. The game wants you in the position of the protagonist, chasing after someone he loves, someone that he finds inherently desirable. But she is not only an object of desire for the protagonist, and to explore that, I want to talk about cheating. The fears and anxieties of cheating are fundamentally different for men and women, especially in straight relationships. When a woman gets cheated on by a man, of course it's awful. That betrayal can wound anyone. But there is a built-in explanation. A de facto excuse for men. This animal lust, this thrill of the chase. He was seduced by feminine charms, his instincts took over, and so on. When a woman cheats on a man, that reasoning doesn't land, because women aren't supposed to be hunters. They aren't supposed to be out on the prowl chasing new mates. The pain of cheating for men becomes venomous, possessive. Why would she leave me for him? What does he have that I don't? What kind of a man can't keep his woman? What she demonstrates in the game is that male objectification, the oversimplifying of the feminine as merely something to be sought, contained, and claimed. She doesn't even have a name, because it doesn't matter. The protagonist forgot her name, and the story doesn't require it. She is just that. She, the feminine pronoun, the thing being chased. I mean, look, what could be a greater example of objectification than she being chopped up and her limbs being stored on your inventory screen? Literally, mechanical objectification in the most blunt, straightforward way video games can allow. She isn't a person, she's a quest item. This is why I think Rose and she are narrative parallels to each other. Both are young women with shortish hair, Both wear thigh-length dresses without shoes. Both are trapped in the gut and mutated by it in various ways. But where she becomes an object, Rose, throughout the course of the game, resolutely remains an actor. Even when you aren't paying attention to her, Rose moves around, appearing at different locations both inside the gut and outside in the hub world. She draws contrast as the only other real human you ever get to truly interact with. Remember how in Rose's ending you escape the gut by breaking through endless walls? Well, in Rose of Meat, Rose actually does escape the gut, and journeys to an island where she's also being harassed and chased in courtship, this time by a man named Gunn. This side game explores the gut as an idea through Rose's distance. Rose describes the gut as a dark place where the poor-hearted search for what they lack. This isn't a bespoke hell just for our protagonist. The gut exists across characters as a tangible place within the fiction. Rose is just one of many trapped in the gut, stuck looking for what she lacks. And in a way, she is also stuck. She's stuck in her dead-end relationship with the protagonist. She says they never go out, they don't spend time together, or really even get along anymore. In a sense, her meeting the stranger, cheating on the protagonist, she's just another wounded soul doomed to search for what she lacks. The gut's true horror isn't that it's a creepy place full of monsters. It's the false hope. The hope that if you do what it asks, play by its rules, do as it says, eat when it tells you, that you'll win her back, and everything can go back to normal. And it's the eating that I think is the key here. Eating your weapons and items is the central mechanic of Golden Light, and beyond that, it's really the signature mechanic. The game loses a massive amount of character and mechanical complexity without it. It's essentially the mascot feature of the game, and therefore becomes central to its themes. Eating weaponry has an obvious primary interpretation: the consumptive nature of violence. The more violence you perform in the game, the more it consumes you. And the more you play, the more violence you consume, the less human you become. Your weapons are your tools of violence, but they're also your primary method of interacting with the game. Without them, your impact on the game world is drastically diminished. A common situation you'll find during a playthrough is taking damage, frantically eating your weapons to heal, only to realize you've rendered yourself defenseless. With no guns, your only options are to sneak carefully around every corner, or to make a mad dash around the level looking for something, anything, before you get caught. Weapon durability also plays a role in this dance. Your weapons degrade as you use them. If you're holding a low durability weapon, and you know you've only got 1 or 2 more chances to use it, it's probably better to just chow down and eat the thing, once again placing you in that helpless position. The game is using the health gain as a bait. You're being lured into a playstyle where you enact violence thoughtlessly, knowing you have this escape route in an emergency. And all you have to do is eat. I don't feel the need to convince people of the connections between masculinity and violence. We know men are supposed to like war and fighting and action movies. Golden Light's trick here is taking that idea of masculine violence and pairing it with gluttony. Men are expected to be big and strong, and you get big and strong by eating well and building muscle. Think back to She. At the start of the game, She is ripped away from us by the gut, consumed by it. And now think of the stranger. A large, lumbering, masculine figure, strong and muscle-bound. If Rose is a parallel for She, and Val is a parallel for the protagonist, perhaps the stranger is a parallel for the gut itself. Perhaps the intro of the game is biased in favor of the protagonist's perspective. He may feel like She was ripped away from him, but through the flashbacks we know the truth. He was a bad partner. She left because she was unhappy. When She leaves in search of what she lacks, she finds the stranger. And when the protagonist finds himself in the same position, he finds the gut. A prison of the flesh where he's the hero, she still loves him, and all he has to do to get her back is to be violent, fight to stay alive, defeat the gut, the stranger who taunts him at every turn, become a real man. This is why I feel the fleshiness, the grossness of the gut is central to this story. This is a world defined by meat. You are enveloped in it from the moment you begin the game. The gut is the force encouraging you to eat, insulting you when you fail and praising you when you follow its instructions, generating an endless dungeon of tissue and filling it with monsters to strike you down and force you, no matter how you might resist, to submit and take a bite. The gut's purpose as an antagonist is to force you into this world of perverse hypermasculinity, where the anxieties and fears inherent to the flesh of male existence become literalized into an inescapable, sinuous labyrinth, a stinking, festering world where bodies dissolve, memories decay, and base instinct roils to the surface. The more you fight it, the more consumed by it you become. Like a riptide swimming against the current only serves to pull you in faster and deeper. This is best exemplified in the Val ending, where the greatest, most challenging goal that the game places before you also reveals the darkest truth of the story. To even see Val's room, you must surrender yourself to the gut completely, like Will Navidson cycling mile after impossible mile into the house on Ash Tree Lane. You desensitize yourself to the disgusting visuals and grasp a mastery of the game's mechanics. By the time you see what Val has done to himself, you've descended so deep into the gut that there's no real chance of escape. You've been digested. And finally, now that we're back here, in this dismal yellow room, there is another side of male pain that we do have to talk about. I confess, there is a primary mechanic of Golden Light that I have chosen not to mention until now. It's one of the most unique system choices I've seen a game make, which makes it a significant facet of the game's thesis and its themes. But I've chosen to omit it so far because it's frankly difficult to discuss. As mentioned before, the game mechanically tracks how much the gut loves you. This is called the gut reputation system, which, in addition to impacting the game's endings, controls a number of other variables during your playthrough. The more monsters you kill, the more you fight back, the more the gut hates you. Monsters become stronger, more numerous, and prices for items and weapons grow exponentially. Certain actions make the gut happier, and it's your job as the player to walk this tightrope, balancing the number of monsters you kill with the rituals you can do to make the gut happy. Things like beating a level, eating your weapons, killing Rose, or hurting yourself. From the very start of the game, attacking yourself is highlighted and tutorialized. One of the first things the gut does is order you to hit yourself. Performing self-harm is one of your primary interact buttons. You can press it basically any point in the game, and doing so is often the best way to calm the gut down. It only takes a few good swings to make the gut love you again. But wait a minute. Let's consider the system we've created here. 1. The gut tracks your behavior and bases the game's difficulty on your actions. 2. Hurting monsters makes the gut hate you. 3. Some of the actions that make the gut love you include hurting yourself and eating weapons. This is a self-fulfilling loop. If you want your best chances to survive in the game, the correct thing to do is to beat yourself half to death anytime the gut hates you, and then gorge yourself on your now damaged equipment. This, to me, is one of the most insidious horrors buried within Golden Light, because it ultimately has nothing to do with monsters or jump scares. It's entirely created by the player. As you play the game, you will naturally, unavoidably find yourself trending towards this cycle, because it's simply how video games are played. If you understand the reputation mechanic, trading some replaceable hit points for reduced prices and easier levels is a no-brainer. It's the obvious correct option. But in electing to take that option, you thematically give in to the gut's wishes. Through the mechanics, we feel the weight of a world that hates you, and the twisted release of pressure that comes from this brutal act. And the game makes it so easy. Just one button, just one little button, and it'll all feel okay. Maybe Val thought he'd feel okay too. Male suicide is a difficult topic. Suicide is a difficult topic, but male suicide rates have been uniquely politicized in a way that I find unspeakably, unacceptably cruel. You may have heard, male suicide rates are higher for men than women, and that is true. According to the CDC, men make up about 50% of the population, but about 80% of global suicide fatalities. Calm, an anti-suicide foundation, reports that suicide is the single biggest killer of men under the age of 45. Some will try to use these statistics to score political points, to belittle women and feminism, to stifle action for gender equality. I ask that you be extremely critical when hearing such arguments, because the truth is more complicated and more important than some would have you believe. In 1998, Kaneko and Sakanovsky published a paper titled The Gender Paradox in Suicide. The paradox is this: women are diagnosed with depression more often than men. Women attempt suicide more often than men. And women make up higher rates of self-harming behavior. But men make up the majority of suicide fatalities. Essentially, men tend to choose more violent, more lethal methods of suicide than women. Women tend to choose methods like poisoning, while men favor more finalistic methods, in particular, firearms. This paper attempts to figure out why exactly this difference exists, and the authors found that, though male suicide fatalities are higher than women on average, this trend is stronger in some countries than in others. In particular, the ratio of male to female fatalities is highest in Western, individualistic countries like the US, Canada, and the UK. Why would this be the case? Well, the authors highlight what they call cultural scripts theory, which states that people attempting suicide will follow cultural patterns and pressures, or scripts, of their environment, and those patterns will dictate their means of attempt. In countries where the paradox is most severe, men are expected to be tough, stoic, and decisive. Men aren't supposed to be weak, passive, or struggle with mental health. They're supposed to man up and deal with it, often receiving judgment from others, in particular other men, for any perceived weakness.
Stop crying, you sniveling ass. Stop your nonsense.
Suicidal men may gravitate towards the most certain, final methods because it is within the cultural script for men to succeed at suicide, but not for men to fail an attempt. Here's a set of passages from the study. Killing oneself may be seen as a relatively powerful act for a male in response to debilitating illness or a serious achievement failure. Conversely, attempting suicide is considered feminine. It is a behavior that is viewed negatively, especially by males, but one that is expected in females in some circumstances. Females may be more reluctant to kill themselves than males because of the taboo against female suicidal death. For males, the belief that killing oneself is masculine may serve as a facilitating factor. Males may actually structure any suicidal act in such a way as to reduce the likelihood of surviving it. At this point, you may feel uncomfortable, especially if you're a man. This isn't something we're supposed to talk about. You might be feeling awkward, anxious, eager to break the tension. We're still talking about Golden Light, right? The gross-out prop hunt game where a toilet sells you a gun, where you throw the Eraserhead baby at a googly-eyed monster, where killing a boss rewards you with a giant flamethrower penis. Surely I'm taking it too far. I'm being grotesque and pretentious. I'm trying to turn this game into something it isn't. If you're feeling those things, that's okay. But do me a favor. Please focus on why. Why is it that we have such a difficult time speaking openly about male mental health? Why is there this pervasive need to minimize, to lampshade, to make jokes? Golden Light is a black comedy. The humor is puerile and irony-poisoned because that's the socially acceptable, socially scripted response to male pain. It's the chaser that makes the rest of the game's story go down smooth. This is the horror. This is Golden Light. The gut is hypermasculinity itself. It tells you to behave, to be violent, to get the girl, until you realize you can't. And that's when it tells you to die. So taking all of that into account, the damsel in distress plot, the male fears surrounding cheating and love, the testosterone-fueled setting, a world composed entirely of violence and meat, the mechanics tying pain to gluttony, to self-harm, to rapture, and the endings depicting a story of the most quintessentially masculine forms of grief imaginable. Is it any wonder why the game's audience is mostly men? The game is speaking to them, speaking from a place of empathy. It understands their pain. To be honest, I don't think Mr. Pink intended to make a story about masculinity. I think he and his team wanted to make a bizarro video game about eating your own guns and to jump scare some people with furniture. Can't help myself. A repurposed factory arm intended to tell a story about political violence and border control. But that wasn't the meaning most people found. Most people saw the story of a robot left to do the same monotonous task on loop for years. The pool wasn't bloody violence, but a desperate bid to hold on to life, even for just a moment longer. Whether or not Golden Light's mission statement was to tell a parable about the failures of masculinity, the game's majority male audience speaks for itself. It gave a unique experience to men specifically because of their place in the world. It held up a mirror to their lives and said in so many words, "I know what it's like." It traps you in a prison of flesh, hands you a gun, and tells you to go win back your woman. It tries to deflect with humor and absurdity, but in doing so, ironically, tips its hand to the real misery hiding beneath the mask. It keeps you obedient, following its rules, chasing after crumbs of hope and approval, all so you won't realize that you're the one being consumed. Hello everyone. Thanks so much for watching my video. Last time I posted on this channel, I didn't really introduce myself. So, hi, my name is Haven. I love art and storytelling and media, and video games in particular are a fascination of mine as the first, widely adopted sort of second-person interactive media space. But video games also have this long history of isolation and alienation and gatekeeping that I have no patience for. So it's my hope that together we can help build a community that values art and science and empathy, especially if you've felt pushed aside and minimized by gaming culture in the past. Maybe it's a little silly, but I like to think about my channel as like the cozy autumn hot chocolate of YouTube video essay. We can be a little campy here, we can be a little saccharine, it's okay. This video took a long time, way longer than I wanted it to, but at least it's done now. I mean, if you got this far, clearly I'm doing something right, so consider giving the video a like, it really helps, clicking subscribe to let you know the next time I post a video. I promise it won't be a year and a half from now. If you have any interpretations or opinions on the game, please leave a comment. I'm actually really interested to see what people have to say about Golden Light. And an enormous thank you to my patrons over at Patreon. Their name should be up on the screen right now. You guys allow me to do what I do. It's an incredible, incredible gift, and I cannot thank you enough. And if you're interested, please consider checking out the Patreon. If you'd like behind-the-scenes content, access to perks like your name in the credits like these fine people, or things like my gameplay footage, my editing, my music mixing, things like that, all of that is available on the Patreon page. And I think that's about it, so, once again, thank you so much for watching.